It is a joy to be back with you this year and to have a part in this great series of lessons and the great theme. And I'm certainly grateful for all the participation that I've been blessed to have with 7B. Glad to be back again today. My subject for this session is how to improve yourself as a personal evangelist. I hope that perhaps you've got something that you can write on, pen or paper. If you don't and you'd like a copy of just this material, I'd be happy to email it to you, send it as a PDF, because I think there's some very practical, I believe some very practical things that we can learn in this particular session, some things that I've probably spoken on this particular subject or theme of evangelism 40 or 50 times in the last few years. And in the preparation of this express theme and topic, some things that came to my mind that I was telling Ronnie right before we got started. I can't believe I didn't think of this before. And so maybe there will be some things that will be helpful to you as well, because it's certainly been helpful to me. One thing I want us to try to think about is 7 things overall, but I want us to be very simple in our approach, because this is a very simple task. I think a lot of times we tend to overthink a lot of what's going on. I'll give you an example about, I'm a bad overthinker. All right, some friends of mine, some relatives of mine from southeast Missouri, they have this little thing going on Facebook where they've been posting their top 30 songs of the 1980s, one each day, and then the 1990s. Well, then they started with the 1960s, and my cousin said, "You need to do this with us." And so I said, "All right, I'll do it." And then I got like this paralysis by analysis, trying to find 30 songs from the 60s. Which ones do I, and it's just for fun. But and I found myself, I said, well, I've got to put this song in here, even though it's not one of my favorites. It's such an iconic song, I have to include it. Like Wichita Alignment by Glenn Campbell. Not one of my favorite songs, but I had to put it in there. So we do this with a lot of different things, and I think personal evangelism is one of those things. And so what I want us to try to do is think in very simple terms about what we're trying to accomplish and how to go about accomplishing those goals. Number one, in how to be a better personal worker or a personal evangelist, number one, uno, stay in the Bible. Stay in the Bible. I've been blessed, and in the very first 7B, and I was blessed to meet with Ronnie and David Shannon and Dale Jenkins and in the planning session, and they brought in a guy in year 1 I had never heard of, Carl Sims. Carl Sims. And since Carl was here at the very first 7B, he and I have become very dear friends. We spend as much time together as we possibly can. He's been in my home, spent the night with us, stayed with us, and so, but Carl is a daily Bible reader. And he reads 9 chapters a day, every day, and reads the New Testament every single month. Every 30 days, Carl's going to read the New Testament. And he got me involved in that, and out of that, I developed a 30-day reading plan for House to House, Heart to Heart, and there's a bookmark, 30 days through the New Testament. And I found that reading compelled me to start one for the whole Bible. And I've been working on it through this year. That daily Bible reading has helped me more than anything else. You think every preacher would be a daily Bible reader, but that's not true. Because being a student of the Word is not the same as being a reader of the Word. In other words, it wasn't that I would go any day without opening my Bible, but I wasn't just reading for my own benefit. And I found that reading every single day enhanced my preaching, it enhanced my teaching, things that I would have never thought of. And as Ronnie and Tim and other preachers will tell you, that things come into your mind while you're preaching that you didn't plan to say. And passages or analogies or illustrations. And so staying in the Bible is key. And so Paul said to Timothy, give attendance to reading. In other words, put your mind on reading. So stay in the Bible. And so that's number one. Number one. Now, number two, and this is very simple. Read Muscle and a Shovel. Read Muscle and a Shovel. Because this is one of the most encouraging books that I've ever read. It's by Tim Shank, one of our brothers in Christ. It's a biography or autobiography of sorts of his journey from denominationalism to New Testament Christianity. And it is really a great book about personal evangelism, not on his part, but on the part of the man that converted him at work. And so read Muscle and a Shovel. This is a great book. In fact, you can even teach it as a class book now. And we're doing that right now at Burleson. We've been using the Muscle and the Shovel and the associated, and you say, well, what about the Bible? Well, let me tell you something. If you do these lessons, you're going to be in the Bible, because it's passage after passage after passage and illustration after illustration and application of these great passages and points. And so, but we've been doing this for a number of weeks now, and it's a very effective tool. It keeps us in the book, while at the same time giving us the strategies and discussing the strategies that the characters, I say characters as if they're not real, that the people in the book used on both sides of the arguments. And so you get to hear both sides. And so read Muscle and a Shovel and teach it as a class book. Now, number three, understand that there are only about a half dozen errors that are common to almost all denominational groups. You know, we think about, well, if I study, somebody's going to ask me a question that I don't know. And that's probably going to be the case for all of us at some point. You know, I'm blessed to work with house to house, heart to heart, and one of the responsibilities that I have there is to answer all the Bible questions that are submitted. And I've been doing that since October of 2003. I've received more than 5,000 questions, received and answered more than 5,000 questions in that time. Guess what? I didn't know the answer to all those questions when when they were asked. You know, many of them, yes. Some of them are very simple, but many of them not so much. And so understand that, yes, there's the chance that you're going to get questions that you don't know the answer to. But also understand this. There are about 6 general errors, and this is what I'm talking about simplifying. If you can learn and deal with 6 common denominational errors, it'll eliminate about 95% of the questions that you'll have to answer that you might not know. And let me give you an example. The sovereignty of God and man's free will. If you'll study that subject, the sovereignty of God and man's free will, because that's the essence of Calvinism. And Calvinism has tainted the vast majority of the religious bodies that are in America today. And so when one understands the Bible doctrine of the sovereignty of God and man's free will, then that goes a long way in addressing a lot of other problems, such as direct operation of the Holy Spirit, irresistible grace. You see, simplify. Understand how to explain God's sovereignty and man's free will. Number 2, here's another one. The origin and nature of the church versus denominationalism. Now, every Christian ought to know the origin and the nature of the church. Everybody should. You know, I would expect that every Christian, I would say every Christian ought to always have an answer for the nature and the origin of the church versus denominationalism. And so that's the second issue that you need to understand. Number 3, faith only. Faith only, which can be different than grace only, depending on if it's a Calvinistic or a semi-Calvinistic point of view. So there's number 3, faith only. Number 4, baptism. You know, the issue, is baptism necessary, and what constitutes New Testament baptism? And again, every child of God ought to know the answer to those questions. Again, we're simplifying. 5, errors concerning the Holy Spirit, particularly miracles. In other words, have a good working knowledge of how to explain Bible miracles and why Bible miracles are no longer going on today. And then finally, number 6, once saved, always saved. Which really goes back to number 1 and the sovereignty of God and man's free will. But again, those are 6 issues right there. That if we can gather a good working knowledge of those 6 things, you're likely not going to encounter any other question of great importance in any of your studies. We say, well, Todd, what about instrumental music? Or what about the Lord's Supper? Or what about women's role? Friends, those are all secondary issues when it comes to personal evangelism. Those are all things that can be addressed later, that can be put off, that don't need to be answered at this. In other words, if we're studying with someone and they bring up the instrumental music or the women's issue, those are not issues that need to even be dealt with because they're not of primary importance. And so if you can delay those, and that's something that we use in Fishers of Men, is to delay questions that don't need to be answered right now. All right? And so don't have to worry about women's role, instrumental music, weekly observance of the Lord's Supper, those types of things. And let me just continue with that line of thinking and get you to think about this. Once you teach a person what they need to do to obey the gospel and they grasp that, all of a sudden instrumental music doesn't seem to be as big an issue anymore. The weekly observance of the Lord's Supper is not an issue anymore. I have never, ever had someone refuse to obey the gospel because they didn't understand the instrumental music issue. And once a person realizes that they are outside of a covenant relationship with God and the Lord Jesus Christ, and they need to be baptized for the remission of sins, instrumental music is about 1,000,000 miles away in their thinking. And what happens is that people, when they realize that they've been taught and believe error about the very necessity or the means by which one receives the remission of sins, then it opens up their mind to the possibility that I've probably been wrong about a lot of other things too. And then their mind is like, well, I don't understand the instrumental music issue, but I'm not going to allow it to stand between me and a proper relationship with God. And so that's why I didn't include those types of things in this list of 6. If we can get a grasp of these 6 things, then we can eliminate the vast majority of areas wherein we might get caught up. And by the way, there's no shame in not knowing the answer to a Bible question. We need to get over that idea that we have to have a working knowledge on every single subject before we can do what the Lord would have us to do. Now, number 4. And this is going to continue. In order to get a good working knowledge of these 6 issues, you also need to see how the other side is argued. In other words, what verses can I expect to hear on these matters as I'm teaching someone else? And the easiest way to do that nowadays is to use the internet. All right? And so what I would say is read denominational blogs and articles online. Read the other side. All right? Look at the scriptures that are used in defense of those doctrines, and then build your case against that article. Start studying to build your case against whatever argument is being made there. And of course, the easy part is that you don't have somebody in your ear. You're just free to argue with the article. You don't have that human being right there in front of you. And so you learn the scriptures that they're going to use. And as Brother G.K. Wallace said, if somebody introduces a passage, just take it and tell what the Bible teaches about it. In other words, there is no scripture that teaches denominational error. There's not a one. Brother Wallace says they don't have a single passage. He says if they enter, and he was talking about in debates and in face, one-on-one situations. He said if they introduce a passage, just take it and explain what it really means. So what you do is, as you're reading these denominational blogs and articles, you take the verses that they present, and then you build the case against their interpretation of that text, and then you show the answer to that. All right? And now, and this is how I would do it if I was going to start all over again and do this, and if I was just, say, a man in the pew, is get you a 4x6 card or a 5x7 card, and when you're doing your research, like this one just says faith only. See, this would be, if I were going to teach this as a class and we were going to do this as an exercise together from week to week, I'd say, build you a faith only card. All right? Now here's what I did. I opened up Mr. Google and I typed salvation by faith only in the bar and I hit enter. 47,500,000 results. All right? So guess what? The information is out there and it's readily available. So all I did was I clicked on the first 4 denominational links that came up on that search result, because some of them were from our brethren. All right? Which is also helpful. But I looked, and what I did is I wrote down on this side proof text. And I wrote down the verses that the denominational article used to defend the doctrine of salvation by faith only. Over here, you see it says answer. So here's the proof text. Here's the answer to the proof text. And now you've got your little card that you've made on faith only that's always going to be right there. It's always going to be handy. And you can build one for once saved, always saved. You can build one for the sovereignty of God. You can build one for baptism. Everything of these 6 things that I put together, you can have 6 5x7 cards that you've done your research and you've done the answer to the research, and then there it is. And you'll always have it. You'll always have it. And so in reading these denominations, and then, by the way, you can use our brotherhood sites to help you build the case that you're going to make as you're building this card. And so the material is out there. And so see what the other side is saying, look at the verses that are commonly used, and then build your answer and put it on a 4x6 or 5x7 card. You know, this is the faith only one. You know, Ephesians 2, Romans 5 verse 1, Romans 3:28, Romans 4, 2 and 3, Romans 10, 9 and 10. You know, and by the way, I read all 4 articles and there wasn't more than a half dozen passages listed in each one of those 4 articles, even though they were all from completely different websites and different authors. In other words, you're going to look at 4 articles and you're going to get about 6 key verses that they're going to use, and then you build your argument and answer against those things. So use this. By the way, this would make a great Bible class. In other words, if you wanted to have a Bible class on personal evangelism, you could study each one of those 6 things that I listed and add more to it if you thought there were other things that you thought needed to be in that list. And from week to week, assign every person in the class, here's your assignment. Study the other side on faith only and build your card, and let's come back next week and see what we come up with. And we work through that together. That'd be a great Bible class. Tremendous Bible class and training for us. And so that's, again, one thing that I would do. Number 5, learn to overcome your fear. Learn to overcome your fear. Many things that we are afraid of are not valid. My wife has a fear of things that jump. You give my wife a room full of snakes or a room full of frogs, she will choose the snakes every time. She could break all speed records if you could chase her with a frog or a cricket, anything that jumps. Now, I have no idea why she's afraid of those things. We've been married almost 30 years. I'll never figure it out. But I know one thing. If I don't want to sleep in a doghouse, I better not bring a frog anywhere near. But it's an inordinate fear. It's not like she's a snake handler, but she's not afraid of snakes. But frogs absolutely terrify her. And she doesn't know why, and I don't know why. But you know, the ideas that we build up in our minds about what will happen to us if we try to talk to people about their souls and we build all of these scenarios to really salve our consciences to not do what the Lord would have us to do. And so these inordinate fears, learn to control your fear. In Matthew 10, 27 through 31, Jesus, in essence, says in verse 27, go and preach loudly. The things that I tell you, he said, you go and you get on the rooftop and preach them from the rooftop. So, in other words, go and preach loudly. But then number 2, he says, don't fear man. Go and preach loudly and don't fear man, but rather fear God. And then lastly in that text, now note this. And I think sometimes we do this text a disservice because generally we only talk about verses 28 to 30 when 27 and 31 I think are of vital importance to understanding the context. And verse 27 is a great commission passage. Go and take the things that you hear me teach you and preach them from the rooftop. But we always start with, don't fear man. And then we go to, but rather fear God. And then we forget the last part of the context, which is this. The very hairs of your head are numbered. What we always stop with, but rather fear him that can destroy both body and soul in hell. That's where we stop. But the next passage, the next verse says, the very hair, and we all know that verse too, but we don't use it in its proper context. The very hairs of your head are numbered. You know, you're more valuable than all these creatures that God has put on this earth, and He cares for them, and He watches over them, and nothing happens to them apart from His ever-watchful eye. So when we go and preach loudly, remember, God will take care of you. God will take care of you. That's the context. Go preach loudly. Don't fear man. Fear God, and remember that God will take care of you. All right, that's John 10, 27 to 31. Then, number 6, choose and develop a plan. And Ronnie spoke to this right before we got started. Choose and develop a plan. Now, there are many different methods of soul winning. Many different methods of soul winning. And Ronnie said, we don't care which one you use, just find one and use it. Now, let me just talk about some of these. Bible correspondence courses. Bible correspondence courses. Enroll people in Bible correspondence courses. You know, some of the most effective soul winners I have ever known never met the person that they converted. You know, at one time, my home congregation had over 100,000 foreign Bible correspondence students. 100,000. You know, they never saw any of them. You know, nobody ever laid eyes on the others. And so, Bible correspondence courses are still an effective way of doing evangelism, particularly overseas. You know, in America, you know, we're losing our passion for reading and for study. You know, we want everything concise and, you know, in 30-second blurbs and all that. Not so for the rest of the world. People still want to have things in their hands to read and to study. So Bible correspondence courses can be very effective. They can still be effective even here in the States. And I'll give you another example, especially among those that are incarcerated. I've probably got 10 Bible correspondence course students right now that are the result of a single individual that I know in prison who is a member of the church who helped me get them signed up in a Bible correspondence course. And so when you have people that are incarcerated, you know, those people have souls. And they need to be saved just like anybody else. And winning those is no more or less than winning your next door neighbor. And so people that are incarcerated, people that are homebound, enjoy that interaction that is found in Bible correspondence courses. And so Bible correspondence courses are still a very effective tool in doing personal evangelism. House to House, Heart to Heart has 2 or 3 new correspondence course series. One is kind of based on what we call the old John Hurt series. that all of us know and have loved for many years. Still a very effective Bible correspondence course. There are 8 lessons in it. Alan has written a series that is somewhat mirrors that series in that it begins with the Old Testament and the New Testament and then carries you through subject by subject. But there's also one on the church. He's written an excellent series on the church. And so the Hurt series is still good. House to House, Heart to Heart has published at least 2 series that are very good. Apologetics Press has a number of Bible correspondence courses that, depending on, some of them are apologetics based, but some of them are evangelistic based. And so, but still very, very effective. So remember that. Also, videos and DVDs. The series that the World Video Bible School has on Searching for Truth. There are 5 lessons on one DVD, and it'll cost you a whole $1 to buy it. $1 for 5 lessons that can be given to someone that they can watch in the privacy of their home. Now, one thing that we do at Burleson is that every year we have, in the fall, actually right before winter and in December, we have a fruit basket campaign. And we carry about 75 to 100 fruit baskets to needy families in our community. And every one of those fruit baskets has a couple of tracts out of the House to House series and the Searching for Truth DVD. Now, to my knowledge, we've never had one person obey the gospel because of that. But that's not on me. That's on them. When the material is given to that person, that's on them. Now, insofar as that we could follow up, because we can't always follow up because we don't always know exactly where our fruit baskets are going. But the point is that DVD is inexpensive, and we've put it into literally hundreds of homes in our immediate community. And so, but the Searching for Truth, John Moore, I believe, is the narrator and the teacher on that. And John is a tremendous Bible teacher, and those lessons are just absolutely outstanding. If you like the Jill Miller series, still can be effective. Now it's on DVD. I haven't used the Jill Miller series in a while, but if that's a method that you like and you're comfortable with, it will still teach people the truth. And so DVDs, videos, all right? Under this, the third, or letter C, one-on-one open Bible study. One-on-one open Bible study. And in this case, it depends on situation. It depends on how much time you have. It depends on the relationship that you have with the individual with whom you're speaking. But this is Carl Sims' series that he has written and copyrighted, and it's called Sowing the Seed. Sowing the Seed. And talking about choosing a method, this is Carl's method. Is the material that he wrote. It is somewhat similar to the old Ivan Stewart Open Bible Study, although this is simplified. There are fewer questions. It's much more attractive than the old OBS. Easier to read. The OBS, the print is very, very small, and that can still be a distraction for people. And so this material is very, very good, and that's the supplemental study. And let me get here. So I can just show you what we're looking at. Here's lesson 1. And you can see there's, it's good print. It's very simple. It's open Bible. It's read a text and answer read a scripture and answer the question. And this one has about 18 questions. In other words, you're not inundated with material. You can get this material done in a short period of time so far as getting a lesson done. And I will be honest with you, I love Fishers of Men, and I love the Searching for Truth lessons. But in my opinion, this is better. This is better for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the simplicity of it and the brevity. In other words, it gets right to the point. I think at times fishers of men can belabor certain points and can get you bogged down. And then number two, this one gets a person to the point of obedience in 2 or 3 lessons as opposed to 5 or 6 lessons. And it's been my experience that some people kind of play out after week 3 or 4 with the Fishers of Men series. Now, I'm not knocking Fishers of Men. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I like this material better. And you can use the principles of Fishers of Men to set up studies and then use this material or any other material that you find useful or helpful. But this sowing the seed to me, is the absolute best. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this on the, just so you can get the number. There's a number and a website, and they have to be ordered from the church where Brother Carl is. That's the Hilldale congregation in Clarksville, Tennessee. And you can call their office and order them. Each set is 75 cents for the set. And so I'll leave that there so you can get the phone number, the website, etc. And that's a great series. I would mention Fishers of Men. Fishers of Men is a great program. It's led untold hundreds and thousands of people to obedience to the gospel. It's not as convenient, I would say, because you have to give up 12 weeks of your time. 12 consecutive weeks of your time to go through the Fishers of Men program. And so in that sense, it's not convenient for everybody to use. Now, Carl's allowed me to do it as well, is that we teach a weekend seminar using his material, and it's 3 sessions, and I've done it, and he's done it. He did it for us, and we did it like 1 session on Friday night and 2 on Saturday morning, which allowed him to get back and be at his home congregation by Saturday night and for the following Lord's Day. And I've taught this material as well in a weekend series, and it's very, very, very effective and very helpful. Fishers of Men, the material is still very good. The training is outstanding. And if you have that kind of time that you can devote to that program, I would suggest that you find out. For example, if there's not a class going on where you are, look and see if there's a class somewhere in the area. In other words, you don't have to be a member of the congregation that's hosting the Fishers of Men class in order to be a participant in the class. And then there are numerous, illustrations, what I call one-shot studies. Of all the things I've ever done, I've got an illustration that I call 3 Scriptures and a Gingerbread Man. And that's the one that people remember more than any other, whether it be at PTP or at 7B or anywhere I go. That singular illustration has been probably more effective for me than anything that I've ever done. And I can send you a PDF of that if you would like to see a copy of that, or if you had a copy and you need another one. But one-shot studies are still very effective, based on relationship and the amount of time that you have in order to teach an individual. And then finally is this: do it. Do it. Take these 6 things and then do them. Again, we can study. We can study until the cows come home. We can prepare ourselves and prepare ourselves and prepare ourselves, but if we don't get out and put into practice the things that we've studied and the things that we've learned, we've not done ourselves any good, and we've not done the world any good. And so we need to just remember, do it. Just get out there, and remember also, you'll not be as effective the first time as you will be the 10th or the 100th time. It's like, I always liken it unto being a soldier. When a soldier goes off for war, there is what's called basic training, and that's what basic, it's basic training. In other words, it's designed to help get a young man on the battlefield with enough knowledge and expertise to do the job of a soldier and keep himself from getting killed. All right? But the guy that hits, and in my mind always goes back. I was an avid World War II reader when I was in school. I bet I read, if you could go back to the Dexter high school in the Dexter, Missouri library and find any of the cards on Guadalcanal Diary, my name's in that thing about 100 times. I'd read it and I'd go back and I'd check it out again and I'd read it again. I bet I read every book, and I read Guadalcanal Diary 100 times at least. And one of the things that struck me that I remember even to this day about that book is that there was a scene pictured in the book where the young soldiers who were just coming from the States, they were fresh out of basic training. They'd come across the pond, and they were coming off and entering into this area of warfare, and they were all bragging about all the things that they were. Every one of them was going to be an Audie Murphy, I guess. Every one of them going to be John Wayne, or of course. Those weren't the illustrations then, but you get the picture. Everybody getting off and talking about all the things they're going to do. And I remember in that book, the older soldiers, in essence, said, they'll learn if they live long enough. They'll learn if they live long enough. In other words, they'll learn to be a soldier once they get over it. It's one thing to go through basic training and have a lot of braggadocio about you, but it's another thing to actually be a soldier and learn how to be a soldier. And so it works the same way as being a personal evangelist. When you get out and you get started, you'll not be the best that you'll ever be, but if you keep doing it, you'll get better and you'll get more effective. And so that's why I say just get out there and do it. Don't wait until you think you can be the best that the Brotherhood has ever seen. Get out there, put it into practice, and do what you've learned. But hopefully these few ideas will help you in your work and in your congregations if you could put some of these things into practice, especially the Bible class series. And if you'd let me know how that goes, if you decide to implement some of these things, let me know how it goes. And because we've been doing this at Burleson for a while. And that's what I said about the card. We haven't been using the card, but we've been doing it in principle. And I wish now that I'd thought to do the card when we were going through these things. But if you do these, let me know how it goes, and I would very much appreciate that. Ronnie, can I take questions? I've got a minute or two. Does anybody have a question or about anything that I've said or anything that we've done over the last few years? Because I don't want to leave you with any questions. All right. Well, if you don't want to ask me now, we're gonna have a short break, and you can ask me then. But appreciate y'all letting me be here, and appreciate your good attention.